Welcome to Safe Doesn't Scale. I'm your host, David Walsh, founder of Limelight. This show is for marketing and growth leaders with a chip on their shoulder who are tired of playing it safe. I am so excited to have Mark here with me to dive into all things LinkedIn algorithm, your journey, and tactically what's working in B2B and what's not working. For those that don't know, Mark is the CEO and founder of Authority and Known, or at least co-founder of both of them, and has done a ton of work. He's been a speaker at HubSpot's events and is an advisor to a lot of different exciting startup companies. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, David. I'm excited, and this is a small kind of personal thing that people who have known me in the past who may be tuning in. The last time I was in a StreamYard recording like this was when my good friend Daniel Disney and I used to co-host a hot sauce sales show that we streamed live on LinkedIn to his audience. And the last time I was in a StreamYard session like this, we had to invent a safe word for him because the hot sauce was getting so hot at plus 2, 3, 4, 5 million Scoville. So I'm stoked that there was no safe word in our podcast today, and we get to talk LinkedIn because that's what I love.
I didn't know that. I knew you knew Daniel, and that's why we got introduced. And just for the audience's awareness, like when we first met, we had that really deep technical conversation, and I was like, you need to go and share your insights and knowledge and expertise. And then you sent me a really nice Slack video and all this information and data that I shared with my internal team. So let's dive into it. I'm excited about this. You know what? I'd like to start with a broad question just to lay the groundwork. And you've got all of this experience in marketing and B2B. What's not working today in B2B?
So my biggest, I would say, like hill that I would die on when I started my career. So I came from management consulting. I had no background in SaaS. And my wife at the time was working in SaaS. She was the chief strategy officer at Unbounce. And she said to me, she's like, Mark, you got to ditch your suit and get some sneakers and SaaS. And fundamentally, even from me coming from management consulting, I was always of the belief that like boring is how you die. And when I was in B2B, my philosophy was always that like great marketing does not feel like marketing. And the moment that it does, you've lost. And what I see right now, I think, is an arms race with AI, and brands are losing the plot. What I mean by that is everyone's like, oh, we need Claude bought this, and I need to buy Minimax or an AWS server, and I'm building this army of agents, and I'm doing this. And I go, okay, well, like, cool, you're getting more productive, but are you getting closer to your customer? Are these analyzing customer reviews, talking to customers? And I think so many brands have gone on this hamster wheel of FOMO, of chasing AI efficiency, that they've actually lost the plot in talking to their customers, in getting closer to the problem, in being able to articulate, this is who we are for. And I'm such a big believer that startups, the analogy I use is like, can never be that chicken dish at a wedding. And here's what I mean. If anyone had chicken at their wedding, no shots fired, don't at me. But chicken is a dish that they pick at weddings because it's safe. It's unlikely to offend grandma, but no one is like, you know what, man? Fuck, like that chicken. I remember that chicken. No, it's like not going to happen. If you do not have a strong stance with conviction that you stand behind as a brand, and you're willing to put your conviction on whatever platforms your content exists in, if you're a lukewarm company with a medium stance that's kind of threading a line and trying to use AI to drive efficiency, you need to build your brand moat now. And my belief is that like the evergreen pillars in marketing, great copy, understanding your customers, distribution, and data are like the fundamentals. And too many brands have gone on this goose chase trying to become efficient, but they're losing what actually makes marketing special. So that's a whole other episode. I'm going to pause it there so I don't rant more.
No, I actually so firstly, we're so aligned as to how we think about the future of what makes you different and unique is social and its brand, and feature parity is something that's happening faster than ever for all companies, right? So it's like, how do you stand out from the crowd? I hadn't thought about it from the lens of like, everyone's thinking about AI and become more efficient. They're listening to these podcasts or reading these tweets and they're like, oh, I should really set up this automation, all internal work. What you're saying is really interesting, which is because of this distraction, what we've lost is the connection to the problem and speaking with customers and users, not making it efficient. I hadn't thought about that. That is awesome insight. I mean, we could ask 50 questions about that. So
let me give you one analogy that I think is really good, and then we'll get in. If I came to you and I said, David, I'm super stressed, my cortisol is through the roof, and do you know what I've done? I've been able to use my AI agents to listen to meditation podcast for me at 5x speed, distill the insights for me, and give me a short executive summary on my mornings. And you say, wow, Mark, is that helping you? You're more peaceful? No, but I am more efficient. So there's this line of like efficiency at the cost of what? And I think opportunity cost is one of those dangerous things. And that's why I'm a big believer. Brands need to be willing to offend their non-ideal customer profiles. You need to go out with such swagger and specificity and conviction in what you believe in right now to build those raving fans. And I think that's what companies have lost the plot with AI. Like one of my favorite Chipotle ads ever written is like a picture of a burrito wrapped in like the aluminum foil. And it says, basically like the thesis of it is like, if anything else was rolled this good, it would be illegal. Right. And like there's versions of this that like brands have done that's like so copy that AI would never write. It is obviously human. Like Ashley from Stuff About Advertising calls this like the effort signal to your audience. That's the thing that brands need to be leaning into. And that's what we're going to talk about with LinkedIn today is like showing your conviction, not just understanding the algorithm, but using that as a mechanism to bring like your truth, your point of view, and your conviction to life in a meaningful way. Because so many great creators get buried on LinkedIn. It just dumpstered because they don't understand the algorithm and how it works. So that's why I was like, let's chat.
Oh, that's amazing. I was on an AMA or Ask Me Anything today, recording 2 hours before this for an hour. And the a new investor invited me to do this. And we bought a couple hundred people and they started bombarding me with questions, everything and anything. And one of the questions that kept coming up was, how do people stand out for the crowd with marketing today? And or even just on LinkedIn today. And I actually said it very similar to you, but I'll say it's slightly different, which is people in B2B at least take too much of a professional, polished approach to content. Everything has to go through this like fine tune, like you need to speak this way, that way. That is BS. Nobody gives a shit anymore. Like consumers want to consume authentic content, and standing out from the crowd, stopping the scroll, saying outlandish stuff is way better than the boring stuff. So I feel like we're so aligned on that.
Here's 3 quick tips on how to do that better, and we'll get into the tactical stuff. One of the first things, and I always talk about this, I posted about this many times, I say, do not be the corporate version of you. Be you, in capital Y-O-U. You are the only one that have your own unique stories. Y-O unique, you, right? Anyone can do how-to content. Claude could go run a sequence and figure out how to. You are the only one that has your lived experience. So one of my favorite examples was when, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was in Smashing Machine. This was something he talked about with Ben Affleck. He's doing this scene in the hospital where he's like, clearly on drugs, whatever's going on. And he pulled something from his own childhood with his mom and his family at the hospital. You get like a 10 or 12 minute standing ovation nonstop from like the authenticity, the people literally weeping in the audience because he was able to pull that from his life. And I think one of the ways that people do this is they accidentally censor themselves. So I am just absolutely completely, if you ever heard me on a podcast or anything else, I'm just entirely me. I am polarizing. If you don't like me, I don't care. I am not for you, and that is fine. And the way that I do it is, if you ever are wanting to like pull out what makes you you, do a little like GPT or Claude session, talk to it, and have it analyze your voice patterns, the phrases you use, and the sound effects. This is very important. When I'm writing my copy, I often intersperse like sound effects into it. I change my tense. So from first person to third person, like I'm talking to myself as a sparring partner, what my head is saying. So like if I'm thinking of something and I'm picturing in my head, Tom Cruise opening a crate of doves, and like that sound or what is coming out, like I write that into the copy. And I find that when you bring whatever your authentic way of communicating, speaking, how you would message your friends in the group chat is the energy you need to bring to LinkedIn. And I think people are worried that they're like, oh, my boss is going to see this. And you know what I mean? And like my team and all these things. And they end up censoring themselves. So that's a really quick tip. The next thing you should do is like look at your winning comments. Just people don't do this enough. Your winning comments are probably your best source of like signal that people love those ideas and the way that you articulated them. Try to distill your signature framework around those ideas and use Toyota's 5 Whys framework. Okay, this comment went viral at 100 likes. Great. Why? Why did people like it? Oh, well, probably because I was, bringing out LinkedIn algorithm data they hadn't used. Okay, well, like, why is that relevant? Because they're probably getting buried in LinkedIn, even though they think they have great content. Okay, well, what's going on? Well, that's an emotional problem of them feeling like they deserve more attention that they're not getting, and they feel like they're being wronged. Okay, well, why is that a problem? Because they actively want to create and pass off their learnings, but they feel like they're getting snubbed. So when you distill things down to your why, what's happening, you can then figure out the emotion underneath it. And then you can say, okay, how do I tap into that emotion with copy? What stories do I have as a person where I can relate to this? And my last tip is picture the rule of one. This is how we write for LinkedIn. And this is important in the new algorithm. We'll talk about this. Every post should be for one audience, one key point, one emotion. And if I was saying to you, hey, David, remember your first board meeting where you got absolutely fucking obliterated by questions you couldn't answer? Just
I remember.
By the VC that was like, you thought was all happy, shows up in a t-shirt, and it's just like, CAC to LTV is shit. What's going on? Tell me about this. How can you fix it? Like, if you said, oh man, it was like Thursday back in 2013, I'm in like my white button up t-shirt and blazer thinking I'm all formal. I walk into this meeting and all these VCs are just in like raggedy t-shirts, and they just start literally yelling at me for 3 hours straight. I was like, I can picture you. I can picture the emotion. I can picture the setting. I can picture if you channel that emotion into your copy and you kind of frame yourself as like a point in time, the emotion you were feeling, and then you say, who am I giving this advice to? Me as a first-time founder about to get destroyed at that meeting. And you say, great, what would I tell them? That is where like your brilliance will come through. So I'll pause there because you could tell like I care so much about this stuff. I get a little animated talking about it.
Well, I want the guests to know and everyone that's watching this to know who Mark is. So Mark is an expert at this, right? 75,000 followers on LinkedIn. You live and breathe this stuff. We are 10 minutes in and I haven't given you the opportunity to introduce yourself. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, what you're building, and why people should listen to you?
So my business partner, Daniel Murray, you may know him from the Marketing Millennials. Him and I had worked together as I got into SaaS, kind of early days for about 3 to 4 years. And we had just a ton of brands come to us saying, you guys seem to have cracked the code on like LinkedIn specifically. How have you grown these pages to 1 million plus followers? What's going on? And we had so much demand from, brands, founders, company pages just saying like, can you do what you've done, the secret sauce to grow on LinkedIn for us? So in the last, 2 years now, Daniel and I launched a LinkedIn agency called Authority. And what we do is we basically do that. So we do ghost marketing, not ghost writing, ghost marketing. And the key difference is distribution. We have more than 2.2 million followers between all of our go-to-market pages on LinkedIn, between company pages and our personal brands. So in the last 2 years on LinkedIn, we've done 1.067 billion organic impressions with a B. So we are in the top 0.0001% of organic reach on LinkedIn. And our goal is to get to 5 or 10 million in a distribution moat in the future. So if you guys are looking to grow on LinkedIn, you want to know how to do this. We've worked with everyone from early stage startups to Fortune 500 global brands. We do writers' rooms, we do consulting, systems implementation, and fully done for you ghost marketing, helping you tap into the audience that we've built to grow. So that's kind of our MVP basically.
Wow. So like we have the absolute expert here. And so I actually think let's start with the LinkedIn algorithm. I run influencer marketing marketplace and LinkedIn is a big focus for us. We help Webflow, ZoomInfo, Build.com do paid content partnerships. LinkedIn algorithm's changing a lot. Even just the last 2 years since I started creating content, I think it changes every 3 months. There was a big change recently. You've done the research. Tell us what we learned.
Yes. So I am an absolute nerd. Like we only do LinkedIn. I've only done LinkedIn for the last 2 years. That is it. We've had clients ask us for other platforms, other things. We operate as like an extension of go-to-market, but LinkedIn is all that we do. So I read every single white paper from the LinkedIn engineering team, all of their academic papers, everything. If you want to know exactly how the algo works, you just have to be like Sherlock Holmes with ADHD and autism like me, and you'll find it. And what we found is that LinkedIn had been laying the groundwork. So in the last 4 to 5 years, they've published 6 really important academic papers. The most relevant one is about this new model they've been building towards, and they started talking about this publicly since like mid 2024, early 2025. And I'll give you the non-technical version, and then we're going to get super, super technical about like what's changed, how it matters for you, and what you should do. So the really high level, 10,000 foot level is LinkedIn used to have a ton of very compute heavy separate systems for how the algorithm worked. They now use this entirely new model, which is a large language model, an LLM, like a Claude, like a Chat GPT. And they're basically completely reinventing how the LinkedIn algorithm works. So there's so many facets of what's changed, and we'll get into the technical stuff, but I just want to read you what LinkedIn have publicly listed as their number one goal, their key goal for when they're doing these things.
Yeah, please tell me.
Context. Our overall optimization target, and granted, this is kind of like engineering revenue, is the increase in the number of daily unique professional interactors, which is defined as the number of unique members who take one or more PIs, or professional interaction actions, dwell time, reposting, comment, sharing, savings, all these things, contributing towards LinkedIn's feed knowledge marketplace. Okay. So I'll take a pause. There's a lot of technical shit that's going to come in the next 10 minutes. So brace yourself.
Wait, just like basically simplify what you just shared in reality, in real terms. What does this exactly mean before we go too deep?
LinkedIn have too many lurkers who don't do anything on the platform, and they 100%. Want to monetize you. Okay. So LinkedIn's bet, if you flash back in time, put on your Austin Powers cap. Okay. If you remember, LinkedIn had on your phone a plus video button, film video. That was LinkedIn's big bet, that they could take the people who weren't creating content, give them a plus video button, have them just record what's on their mind and ship it, and then it would work. The problem was they were like, oh yeah, people are going to do this. Absolutely not. People were uploading professionally edited, polished video from Instagram and YouTube.
Guilty.
All these other creators were like, well, shit, I can't just like raw dog film myself on a camera and upload it. Like I can't do it. So this massive failure, this bet from LinkedIn of doing this, their product team basically went on record and said, yeah, we were wrong. It didn't work. People didn't want it. So then they said, okay, how can we get people to be more engaged? How can we start to show new creators that it's easy for them to grow? So new creators have an advantage now, this new LLM.
Agreed.
And on top of this, they said, okay, how can we reward some of the people who are actively creating now, but maybe aren't seeing the silent majority, the 99% who aren't maybe even commenting, but are just consuming? So we always look at the features that LinkedIn ship. And this is a subtle lagging indicator of their focus. So stick with me. LinkedIn launches comments impressions for the first time. What does that tell you? They want you to comment, and they are trying to get the lowest lift closest thing to posting, which is commenting. So if you're commenting as a creator on the platform, maybe you're not posting, and you're seeing that your comments are getting good impressions, good engagement, you're like, oh, great. Maybe I can do posts now. Maybe I can just take that. Okay, so that's a step they're trying to take us. But then what happens is LinkedIn starts showing you the number of saves, the number of sends, all these silent metrics that are starting to roll out into like GA that not everyone has yet, to show you, hey, there are people who are consuming your content. They may not be liking, they may not be commenting, but I can guarantee you they're saving, they're sending. So they're trying to incentivize.
Which is so powerful, by the way. Like I had a few posts that people clicked save, and I was like, wait a second, this isn't getting that much engagement. And then I looked at it, it was like a 20 saves. The next day it exploded. I feel like there's these things that they're doing behind the scenes that, number one, I think like it's great to get the data. It's like very much better than what was there before, right? This is interesting information. Keep going. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. So in this like cycle of what LinkedIn are investing in, they're saying, hey, we eventually want to get to this knowledge marketplace where LinkedIn is the place for professionals to share, right, and create. With all the AI that's happening and all these other places, LinkedIn will always be the best business people on LinkedIn because they want to make you advertise. They want to, A, B, and C. Now, if you look at organic reach, LinkedIn have been pummeling it every year because they're pulling it back and making you pay for it. Buy a boost. Promote a thought leader ad, right? We've seen company pages drop like 60% year over year in organic reach, because LinkedIn are saying, oh, hey, no, buy a sponsored page, pay us $179 a month for LinkedIn Premium on your company page, boost your content, and then put thought leader ads behind it. So
Mark,
you
can I ask
see
you a
this.
question on that?
Mhm.
What's your take on this? Like, I understand why they're doing it, right? And everything you just laid out. How do you
Yep.
feel about it?
I feel that you create your own luck in life. And I used to have this written in my room, in my bedroom, and that where people yell and complain, reaches down, this is a disaster. I go, how can I study this, understand it better than almost anyone on the planet, and use it as my mechanism to win? So I'm going to give you a quick tip from the new algorithm and talk to you about how you can win. LinkedIn's new LLM algorithm, first and foremost, is an LLM. What they are trying to do is Skynet shit. And that's what I wrote down. Is like they are trying to accurately predict a profile model of you that's compressed into one byte about who you are, the relationship you say you have to your company, other people, your target customers. They're then looking at the engagement of who's engaging with your last 3 months of content. It's like a 2 to 3 month rolling average. And they're saying, hey, is this guy David who he says he is? What's his title? What's his relationship? Who does he say he's posting for? And who's actually engaging with this content? Then they're saying, how accurately in this model can we predict what David is going to do next? Right? What jobs will he apply for? Who will he hire? What will he do? And there's a whole section on how they're trying to predict what jobs people will apply for.
Why do they want to know that?
What content to show. Because
Why do
they
they
want
know
to
that?
be able to show you the exact next role for your career, and that LinkedIn is the place to get it. So when you look at what's happening now, they are trying to build a really compute light version of who you are down to a compressed byte, basically, right? And when you look at the model and they talk about what they're trying to do, it's like crazy of how they're trying to compress things. So I'll come back to the profile side of things, but I do want to talk about the distribution because it's important. This new thing on LinkedIn that you need to know about is called cohort seeding, SEEDING. And it is just a fancy way of saying if David says he's for B2B companies, B2B SaaS companies who are trying to scale on influencer marketing, LinkedIn says, okay, prove it. I'm going to look at your content and I'm going to look at the first 30 minutes and I'm going to say, who's engaging with your content? LinkedIn used to do 60 minutes and they have different, and it's not quite precise of what they talk about it, but they are gut checking what you are saying in your profile now. And they are saying, prove it. Now, LinkedIn basically takes the millions of posts you could have seen down to now a range of 2,000. Okay. They are then looking at your 3-month rolling average of who is engaging with your stuff, who you say you're for. Then they do a little test window for 60 minutes. That's why usually your first hour of your post only gets a micro percentage of your total impressions and engagement. They are testing. And there's an entire loop on the LinkedIn engineering, page. Daniel and I did our presentation at HubSpot's Inbound on this, as part of like our keynote about exactly how it's a whole entire thing. I won't talk about it. What matters though is your profile is the signal of who you are. So your title in LinkedIn matters a hell of a lot more than it ever did. If it's fluffy, like futurist, thought leader, has cats, dad of 3, LinkedIn goes, well, that's not useful. If it says founder at, here's what we do, here's who we're for, here's what's going on, LinkedIn's building that profile of you, and they're then matching, okay, who's engaging here? So think about the opportunity here for a second. If you had the ability to influence who is engaging in that first window, that's a big part of how we kind of differentiated our agency offering, which was we help you using the audience that we've built, one, understand them better, to create content emotionally that's going to reflect and be specific for that audience. 2, write with what I mentioned in our call, kind of like that hey lawyer copy format, which is, I was saying to you, I was in Miami and I was, driving by and I see these like lawyer billboards and they're so specific. It's like, hey, did you get a DUI on a boat? Call, John Boat DUIs, right? It's like very, very, very specific, right? So LinkedIn is rewarding specificity of you calling out the exact audience, delivering on your promise, and them engaging on it. That is a slam dunk Babe Ruth out of the park kind of win.
I think it goes back to your first tip though, which is you should be writing for one person. Like take the archetype of who you're writing for and get very crystal clear on who you're writing for, because everything you just shared with me right there basically aligns to like relevancy, We want to make sure that the content matches the audience and it's relevant.
Correct.
And if you think to the consumer of what they're trying to do, I think LinkedIn, and I've met with the leadership team at LinkedIn, was up in their headquarters in San Francisco, showed them the product that we built. They love working with creators and want to introduce and, you know, be helpful. I think they're doing some things well and other things very badly, but that's a different conversation. I asked them, what do you care about? Like, what is the goal here? And they said, most people, they didn't directly say this, but like, let me just
read between the lines.
Yeah. They said most people log into LinkedIn once a month. We want people to log in every day. Monthly active users, daily active users. That's what we care about. How do you get people to create more or log in more? Well, they have to see value. What are they coming for? A job, to be educated, entertainment, or something else, right?
Yeah.
Most of it, that experience that they have today is in the newsfeed. So relevancy is incredibly important because they could learn something and see something relevant. I think the knock-on effect of what they've done to the newsfeed is going to be studied and there's going to be improvements made. But if relevancy is the key metric to focus on, everything you've just shared with us right now and continue to drop bombs of knowledge on us is very much focused around like, how do you create great content for one person and make it tied to what your profile says you are and back it up?
Yeah. So I'll hit kind of like the fast facts of like what matters now and what's different.
Yeah.
Number one, you need to clean up your bio. Your bio now is how the LLM parses and builds your Skynet profile. So if you think about John Connor, you know, and the Terminator looking for John Connor, you know, it's like you need to give LinkedIn the same about you. You need to feed it that so that it knows exactly who you are, what your unique value prop is, what your authority metrics are. So if you go and look at my profile now, it's just filled with like our authority metrics. You know, we have 2.2 million followers. We did 1,067 impressions in the last 2 years. We have 535,000 newsletter subscribers. We have, you know, this is what we've done for brands. Here's who we're for. The reason I'm feeding it that is so that it's getting more B2B SaaS companies in front of us, media companies, you know, all of the right audience that we want to be in front of. Right. So that's
I want you
one.
to tear down my profile after this. You know, sure, I feel like there's improvements that we need to make.
We can definitely do that. So a fun stat for you guys, and this was done a few years ago, but I'll have to remember the source. About 68% of people won't even click your see more in your bio, in your about section. So there's a difference now of the LLM is reading all of it, but there's a caveat to this. There's a specific caveat, and this is a really big thing in the new algorithm that matters a shit ton. Let me get to that first, actually, because I hate when people lead you on a wait. LinkedIn uses this new system, which is awesome. It's called like MOE. And basically what it is, don't mind the technical stuff, it's like a mix of experts. So if you've ever heard this before, they give it like a boardroom of advisors. There's like 8 of them in this new model. Each of them only comes into play when that expert is needed. So imagine it like profile analyzer, post analyzer, headlines, entity relationship. They don't talk about exactly like what they are, but they're all very unique. And what's interesting is that LinkedIn actually found kind of like a unique discovery. I'm not sure if you remember how like Viagra medicine came to be, but it was an accident. It was like a side effect.
I don't remember. No.
Yeah. So like Viagra was invented by accident. It's a completely random side effect to people when they were doing another drug entirely. And they said, like we can market this. What LinkedIn found in their LLM testing was that there is this issue, and basically what it's called is lost in distance. It's called the lost in distance problem. And the way it works is they have a blind spot. And the blind spot is if you have a post that's 3,000 characters, you know, a profile that's 3,000 characters, the compute power that they're spending to analyze stuff, when they're analyzing all of it, they were getting much worse results than when they just started scanning the beginning of it and the end of it. Okay. They had almost 15.9% better performance, I think it was, doing that. So what that means is now the first 60 tokens of compute power that are being used to analyze your content, your posts, are what are getting the majority of the weight of how good your content is relative to LinkedIn's new algorithm and how much it's going to serve it to your audience. What that means, because we don't quite know how their compute works, probably your first 2 to 270 characters of your posts are what matters for the LinkedIn algorithm to rank your content. Then how does it end? Does it end and deliver on the promise? Now, let's say you wrote a 2,000 character post. You're saying, well, shit, Mark, like, what about the other, you know, middle characters, which is the majority of where my like heart and soul went into that post? Okay. They're helpful for dwell time. So do we talk about dwell time last time? I can't remember.
No. We
Okay.
didn't, but I write with the mindset of how do I keep people
Yes.
continuing to read and taking the time to
Okay.
continue to read. So I understand it, but tell the audience.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. LinkedIn CEO went on record a few years ago, and he had my favorite phrase. I'll look up the exact quote if I can find it here for you. Okay, so Ryan went on record, and he said he wanted to stop what's called bro poetry, which he called broetry. And if you've seen this, it's kind of like, oh, I was like, at this meeting today, and then something devastating happened. And it's like, okay, if you saw that in your feed and you clicked see more, you are now in what's considered active dwell time. You've taken a step to engage. Every second you now spend on that post, LinkedIn is ticking that clock, and that's active dwell time. Had you not clicked that and just had your phone up and looked at that, that is passive dwell time. Okay. Now, what they wanted to avoid was people kept creating these shitty clickbait posts that were like, oh my God, my life was devastated because you didn't attend my webinar and we're hosting A, B, and C. And I was like, okay, fuck off. Like, this is what we try to do. So what they did was they did a number of things. The first thing that they did is they said, okay, we're going to basically try to front load the weighting system, because incidentally they wanted to do that. And then also it worked better with the compute model. So the beginning of your post is what matters most. First 60 tokens, we covered that. The next part is, do you know carousels and how carousels became just so ramped up because they worked? People were doing a lot of like really fluffy clickbait carousels too. Now they're downranking two specific things. Your click to bounce ratio. So do you know when you click a link in LinkedIn, it opens up in the LinkedIn browser as opposed to somewhere else?
Yep.
That's because LinkedIn are actually seeing if you bounce back immediately to the platform after clicking that link, right? They want to see, are you getting value from what someone was promising? And the same is true for a carousel. Carousels are now getting destroyed if you have a low completion rate, because people were doing these just like fluffy broetry hooks the same way. So you can see what LinkedIn are trying to do here. They are trying to get you to deliver on the authority and the promise of your message. Now, I shared this tip in our session. I shared on pretty much every podcast, every main stage I ever do, which is how to get people to click your links on LinkedIn. You want to talk about this now, or do you want to talk more algorithm stuff?
I want to talk about links because I just put a link in my post last week and I told somebody that it would perform. And then I went back and I was like, the reach is down, but then loads of people clicked the link. So I was like, yeah, it went down funnel and like the vanity metrics weren't great. But when I actually looked at how many people clicked it, I was like, oh, that's way more than I thought. So tell us a little bit about links. And then, you know what, Mark, I actually think that we should focus on 2026. What are the trends? And then let's say a year or 2 years from now, where do you see this going? So tell us about links first.
Got it. So first and foremost, if you are putting your links in the comments, raise your hand. We've all been guilty. Stop doing that. It is not a best practice. Okay. Now, if you're like, oh, Mark, where's the data? What's going on? We should do. I'll come to that. In the last, 1.067 billion impressions that, Daniel and I have done on LinkedIn in the last 2 years, we have found there's 3 much more effective mechanisms. And this is also backed by data that Shield Analytics have done on LinkedIn. You can take a look at that. I'll share some of that too. Here's what you should do instead. Post your content and either just put the link directly, but make it hyper visible and hyper clear. If you're promoting something and it's clear, put it in your first hook or rehook, first line or second line. Make it super clear, make sure it's not truncated. Okay, it's number one. That's like the most basic. And the reason is when Shield looked at the last 50,000 posts they analyzed in their cohorts, like end value of 49,700, basically 50,000, they found like a 1.97% drop of just putting the link in the post, but making it visible because people click. Okay.
Can I just ask you a quick question? Are you saying put the link in the hook or just underneath the hook?
Either or is fine, but just make sure it doesn't get truncated. Really long links, especially if they have UTMs and stuff, will get truncated. So if people don't actively get to active dwell or see more, they're not going to see your link. So if you just say, hey, big news, blah, blah, blah link. Now, another way you can do this is Gary Vee, when he promotes his books, he does stuff, he pays for LinkedIn. So you have your visit my website. He edits his title, which is kind of a bad practice now in the new LLM world. And he says, get my new book. And it's an arrow down and his link. So there's ways you can do it. But what I like is the better way of doing it is start your post without the link for the first 15 minutes. And here's how I do it. Let's say that I'm doing something where I want people to read the entirety of my post before they get to the link, because I'm trying to convince them of a premise or say, hey, here's what you should do, or give them the context. What I'll do is I'll say, hey, let's say I was just promoting something, you and I were doing something for an event, like a webinar. I'll say, hey, here's the 6 things you're going to learn about what's new in the LinkedIn algorithm. Cool. I'm going to have a line at the end of my post that says, PS, link in my bio for you at Mark Jung. And I'm going to have that link in my featured section and in my primary link for the time that post is live. I wait 15 minutes, 1-5, for organic engagement during that testing period, right? For people to come, start liking, start commenting. Okay. Then I go back and I calculate the character count of my post. Okay. So if I had 2,000 characters, you can safely edit about 14% of your total character count, not words, character count. So what I do then is I replace that line that had link in my bio and I say, link for you. Now, this is where people kind of mess up. If you have a giant link with a ton of UTMs, that's going to be way more than 14% of the total character count. So pre-shorten your link elsewhere and then paste it in with all your stuff if you had UTMs for brands. So then you're going to keep within that character count. And then what's going to happen is you're going to benefit from that first 15 minutes of organic engagement that likely would have been a lot lower had you not have it there. So that's the way. The last way is do what are called resource posts. So not just one link, here's 3 to 5 links and make it something that people are likely to save or to send to people. Because then you're basically going to artificially, drive better engagement, and you're more likely going to have those links to get clicked, which is a signal to LinkedIn. If people are clicking your links and bouncing back immediately, your post is immediately getting downranked as like spammy link, not delivering on the promise. That's why it's better to get people to click your links in a visible area rather than them getting buried in the comments and then there's people not seeing it.
I want to call something out for everyone that's watching this, right? I've been building Limelight for 2 years and it was very much focused on LinkedIn because nobody had built an infrastructure that could power the creator economy on LinkedIn. And it was really hard to find influencers. During that journey of me creating content, and I went from 2,000 followers to 41,000, a mere mortal to you, Mark, at 74,000 followers. But I have met some LinkedIn gurus, right? Of all shapes and sizes. You might be the most scientific person that I've ever met. You actually might be the LinkedIn scientific expert.
The LinkedIn scientist. I'm going to change
the LinkedIn
that.
Scientist. That's it.
I'm going to change that to my.
That's your title now on LinkedIn, and then the algorithm will pick you up as the LinkedIn scientist. We'll see what happens. No, but honestly, I just think you're dropping so much knowledge, and I think keep going. But I actually want to turn this to. Where do you see this going? Yeah. Because I think people are going to be very interested in, okay, we get it today, right? Where is this going this year? Where is it going next year? And what are your predictions?
Yeah. So a big thing that I'll say first, if you're like, Mark only has 74,000 followers, what's going on? I've probably personally written over 10, maybe 15,000 posts in the last 2 years under our agency.
Wow.
I post only like maybe 10 times a year for my personal brand. I'm going to be ramping that back up now that I've moved to the Cayman Islands and I'm here and like getting my content studio and was just saying, but like, I don't post a lot personally. What I do is I build media pages, other brands, other content. So if you're like, this guy, Mark, I don't know, what's going on. It's like, I can promise you in the last 60 days, we have been able to grow net new pages from 0 to 25,000 followers, averaging 4 to 6 million impressions per month from net new from 0. And I've showed you some of these and you've seen the analytics.
Right. I need to get you to do this for Limelight. I think we've got like 11,000 followers. We don't post any content on Limelight. It just reposts my content. Let's talk about that offline. Let's lock that in.
So the thing that I would say about why we've been betting on this and why we're building so many media pages and distribution on LinkedIn is it comes back to where LinkedIn is going. And my belief is that to win on LinkedIn, you need to think about the remaining moats in the world, right? What are the moats that remain in the world? Well, there's network effect, there's scale effect, there's data, right? There's brands because kind of products kind of going away. And then there's my favorite, which is distribution. Distribution is a moat. So if I say to you, hey, David, I'm going to have 10 million go-to-market followers in the next 5 years across 150 LinkedIn pages, each with a hyper-specific audience like revenue leaders, salespeople, sales operations, brand marketers, advertisers, creators, designers, you name it. And they're all hyper-specific in clusters of 5 to 10 pages per cluster. And I have 100 to 250 of them. And I can say, hey, you're trying to reach an advertising audience, right? Well, I have 37 pages with 800,000 followers that we can help you reach and provide distribution on your content as well. Like, is that interesting to you? It's like, yeah, how do I get that? So our big bet and our belief of where LinkedIn is going is in this current form of cohort seeding and hyper-specific ICP needing to engage in your content. We believe that distribution and taste will become the way of how you win, right?
Yep.
If you can study and get closer to the customer, and that's a big part of what we've been able to do with Daniel, with the Marketing Millennials, like one of the largest marketing communities, top marketing podcast, newsletter, and so forth. He is so close to his audience. They absolutely have love the brand. They've loved it for years. It's because he's close to them. He listens, he understands. So our big belief is I think the world is trying to come back to 2016, and we want to help them get
What do you
there.
mean?
So there's this Mark Cuban calls it the Milli Vanilli effect. You heard of this analogy?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So Milli Vanilli was like a singer-songwriter who basically was like, back in the day, I think he was 70s, maybe 60s. Don't quote me on this, my parents' generation. And people found out that he was lip syncing. They were lip syncing. Right. Immediately credibility just crashed. If you were writing a post, I would have put that sound effect in my post to bring it to life, by the way. So people immediately were like, oh, like this is disaster, right? Like it's fake. Mark Cuban's point of view is that people will return to what feels hyper authentic to them, which is going to be like offline and events and the brands that make you feel something unique, like is uniquely human and built for you. So our belief is that getting closer to the customer, close to the community, and by building, you can call it a fancy way of distribution, an owned audience and people who love your content, you have so many reps of cycles of what they emotionally care about because you're finding out what actually matters to them, what they're feeling, right? And when people are producing basic mass-produced AI slop and content and whatever, and talking about their product and blah, 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 you will have stayed so close to what they care about that when someone goes, and this is kind of my favorite study. And if you only remember one thing from this talk and you're trying to get marketing budget for LinkedIn, it's this. Google and Bain did this study. I think it was like originally back in like 2019, and they did it again, I think in 2024. And what they found was that 9 out of 10, it's like 8.9 out of 10 B2B buyers buy from what's called a day one list. Now, I don't remember if we talked about, did we get into this before?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the point is that day one list is influenced for at least a year, often a year plus, sometimes 2 years, multiple years. So here's what's happening. And I think the first people that ever did a great job of coining this were at Goldcast. They called it mindshare marketing.
Yep.
Your content every day, whether or not it's driving immediate, revenue pipeline, whatever else, is winning mind share when you have people see you in the feed and go, oh man, that brand gets me. Yes, like that brand gets me. I am seen. I am being, educated. I am laughing with them. I'm being challenged. I'm being inspired. You think about those emotions that you're trying to hit. And that's what we've done with pretty much, the hundreds of brands we've worked with is we get those emotions in what we call like edutainment, which is the most of what we do, half education, half entertainment, make them laugh and learn, right?
And as you're doing this, just so everyone's aware, like people in B2B aren't always buying products. They don't always have the need or the problem that your solution is for. But when they have the problem, what you want to be a top, example of, we know the 3 to 5 legacy players, but there's this new player that's creating content that's touched my soul over the last 6 months. I want to prefer them. Let's go see what they have. And I think that's really interesting.
Touched my soul with content is a great line. That should be like an album that we do, kind of like You, Me, Like This with like some sparkles. Like, Liquid Death actually takes their 1-star reviews and they turn it into an album that they produce with like a real singer, songwriter, and band. So, but yeah, the stat is basically like what? It's like 3 to 5%. It's only 3 to 5% of B2B are ever in market at any given time. So when you come back to the day one list, what LinkedIn or what Bain and Google found, and it was basically the same data like back in 2024, I think it was, 9 out of 10 people who had that day one list buy from that day one list. Wow. So if you are not on that day one list, you're absolutely screwed. And what people don't realize is they get in this short-term trap of like, LinkedIn hasn't immediately driven X amount of revenue for us. Well, it's like, did it get your brand point of view across? Did it build mind share? Did it grow your own audience? Were you able to use that? Like we've helped net new company pages go from like 2,000 to 50,000 plus. We've helped brands win LinkedIn's top startup award. We've helped all of these things. And it's like the own audience and the mind share you build is the moat that you are betting on for your distribution. So to answer your early question, I believe that mindshare marketing and winning being on that day one list by getting emotionally close to your customer and being the person that they can trauma dump with and laugh with and learn with on LinkedIn every day as the brand that they want to be like in their circle, like the equivalent of like on their home screen on the phone, is what will make you win. And that AI efficiency and all this other stuff that loses the plot around the humanity of content and how you can touch the soul of your audience is what we'll lose. So Yeah.
There we have it, folks. That was one of the most insightful knowledge bombs every 1 minute conversation and call that I've had. I honestly think that we could have gone on for another hour. And I realized that this was meant to be 30 minutes. It's now 45
I was
minutes.
like,
so we're gonna have to do a number 2 for sure. So Mark, where do people find you? How do they learn about you? Where should they go to, get to know Mark a bit more?
Easiest way is go look up my LinkedIn, give me a follow, shoot me a connect, tell me what you liked about the podcast, what you want to know more about, and what you hated. I'm a big foodie, so if you have food that you love, I'm always traveling the world eating. Send me your favorite restaurant. It's Mark P. Young. P is for Philip. I use it there, so when I get spam, it goes, "Hey, Mark P." You can always tell how it's automated.
Nice.
So Mark Philip Young. And if you guys want to check out what we do over at Authority Unknown, you can check out authorityb2b.com. That's the agency that Daniel and I run. If you guys want consulting, help with your LinkedIn, advice, or you're just looking to have us on a show, have us speak, I'm not traveling as much, but in the next kind of month or two, I'm going to ramp back up and I think get back to the circuit because people want to know about the stuff. And I love to talk shit about LinkedIn.
You've given me a reason to go visit Cayman Islands. When we first met, I told you my parents lived in Cayman Islands for 8 or 10 years. I never got to go. So maybe we'll make that happen. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us. That was awesome. We'll have to do number 2 very soon.
Likewise. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Safe Doesn't Scale on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Limelight is the leading AI-powered B2B influencer marketplace and social signals platform. Brands like HubSpot, Webflow, and ZoomInfo use Limelight to power influencer programs at scale. Start your first campaign at limelihq.com.